Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our second member call on pending bills that would provide needed revenue for New Jersey's infrastructure while advancing the type of tax reform relief that NJBIA has long advocated for. If you joined us last week, we talked about NJBIA's support for a Senate bill that would provide the balance that we were seeking. Again, needed revenue for New Jersey's infrastructure, but advancing true long-term sustainable tax reform that BIA has long advocated for. The bill that we were supporting last week was a Senate bill that provided, in exchange for an additional 23 cents of gas tax on top of an existing 14.5 cents, in exchange, it would provide tax reform relief that included the total elimination of the estate tax over 4 years, a phase-in of a higher threshold on pension and retirement income tax, charitable deductions to the federal level, and an increase in the earned income tax credit from 30% to 40%. As I say, that is rather comprehensive tax reform, the type of reform our members tell us that they are looking for every day. However, as we continued our good advocacy at the State House last week, we came upon a turn of events Monday evening when an Assembly bill was presented and, in fact, passed by a majority of the Assembly, which had the governor's support. And that bill shifted the tax relief to what we'll call maybe more direct, some perceived tax fairness. And what it included was, in exchange for that same increase of 23 cents in gas tax, a decrease by 1 penny on the New Jersey sales tax, which would take sales tax from 7% to 6%. And it did have in there relief on increasing the threshold for pension and retirement income tax. But all the other facets of the reform fell out of the bill. Now, the cost of that new program, again, with the decrease in sales tax, the cost of that program after a full phase-in is estimated to be about $1.7 billion, where the prior version, the Senate bill that we were initially supporting, had a value of about $870 million. And the Senate bill, there were discussions and strategies of how that change in revenue would be made up. So now we are looking at a much more significant impact to New Jersey's budget without an explanation, perhaps, of where that savings or new revenue would come from to support the difference. And I want to suggest that's over half a billion dollars. It's over $500 million, and that is in addition to the continued threat we have right now of a constitutional amendment to fully fund the pension as a super priority over all other budgetary needs to the tune of about $3 to $5 billion a year. If that pension amendment were put on the ballot in November and passed, and you had a first nut to crack of $3 to $5 billion on top of another $500 million, you can see that our budget is in woeful state as we look forward. So, some would say, as we asked, well, we can cut expenses as the years go on, but we've all lived in New Jersey for a long time, and we know that cutting expenses in New Jersey is not something we see every day. Rather, what we see that usually when we need to make up shortfalls in our budget, it falls on the back of our businesses. And if history were to repeat itself, what we would see is a millionaire's tax, which we know is a tax on small business. And we would see an increased surcharge on corporate business tax, just for starters. So further, the new plan doesn't provide the real sustainable tax reform that we initially signed on for. The sales tax reduction, we've been told by many of you, by many of our members who reached out to us over the past week, the sales tax reduction does not bring relief to you in the way that would be a fair exchange for the increase in gas tax. And rather, you have told us that you want us to stay the course on true tax reform, which includes particularly estate tax relief. Because in the state of New Jersey, we know many small businesses in the state of New Jersey are family-run business, and estate tax planning is succession planning. And many of our small businesses tell us that estate tax is a threat to them for the future of their company and a reason why they choose to leave the state of New Jersey. And many of you have read our out-migration report and the fact that we've lost $18 billion in net adjusted gross income over the past decade, $3 billion alone in 2013. And one of the forces driving that out-migration, as you tell us every day, is the levels of estate tax in the state of New Jersey. The lowest threshold in the entire country at $675,000. And when you tax it on the very next dollar, is at a rate that it makes the tax appear almost regressive. And we are not competitive at all to our surrounding states and the states that vie for our members and our businesses every day with more favorable tax environment. So where are we today? You all read the paper, you're keeping up on the debate, I'm sure, but today it would appear we are at a stalemate with the perception that our leaders have hunkered down on their positions. There's always room for compromise, but as we see it today, Assemblyman Prieto will only proceed with a bill that the governor will sign. The governor today supports the sales tax decrease, as we've discussed. He sees that that is the most balanced way to have true tax equity to an increase in the gas tax. And let's pause for a moment and let's talk about what that sales tax relief has been suggested to be for New Jersey residents. It is estimated that you would save $400 per household in sales tax, but that you would pay an additional $200 per household from the increase in gas tax. So it is suggested that you're getting, twice back than what you're putting forward with the gas tax. In order to get that $400 per household, however, you must spend over $40,000 in taxable purchases in an annual year, in 1 year. Now remember, food and clothing are exempt from sales tax. So we're talking about spending $40,000 of taxable purchases on items, which means that the level of income is much more significant in order for a family to afford to spend that in taxable purchases per year, okay? So, and we know Sweeney today, his position right now is that he still likes the original bill. Again, though, we know that everybody always talks about the ability to compromise, but Sweeney is firm that the current bill is too expensive for his consideration. So where are the potential compromises? Well, if the sales tax must be a part of any compromise, we suggest that we exchange a half a penny for the needed estate tax relief. This would provide a savings of about $500 million. So we might be right back to where we were before, while still impacting the budget in a different way because of the way the sales tax decrease impacts the budget. It's still less of an impact on the budget than would have been afforded with the full penny. And as we know, for our members, we really can't consider any proposal that does not incorporate estate tax relief, and therefore we have made it known through our press releases and in our discussions that NJBIA will have a very difficult time supporting any gas tax increase without true tax reform that includes estate tax relief for our members.